Every single day, factories around the world ship billions of finished products: shirts, smartphones, car parts, medicine, food packaging. Mine blast, bulk carrier crossing an ocean, furnace pouring molten steel, robot arm placing a component, packaging line sealing a box, a doorstep delivery 2 days later. Almost none of the people who use those objects have any idea how they came to exist. The raw material that becomes your car door was once ore sitting in the ground in Western Australia. The aluminum in your soda can was bauxite 2 continents away before it was ever a can. And the journey between those two things, dirt and finished product, is one of the most sophisticated, brutal, and quietly astonishing feats of engineering our civilization has ever pulled off. Mass production is not an assembly line. That is the myth. It is a choreography involving geology, chemistry, logistics, robotics, quality control, and human judgment operating simultaneously at a scale that is almost impossible to hold in your head. This is how it actually works. From the moment a raw material comes out of the ground to the moment a finished product lands in a warehouse, and why getting even one step wrong can collapse the whole system. Before a factory can make anything, someone has to find the material. That sounds obvious, but the sourcing problem is enormous. Take steel. In 2024, the world produced just under 1.9 billion tons of crude steel. Nearly 1.5 billion of that came from basic oxygen furnaces fed by iron ore. That ore has to be mined, crushed, concentrated, sometimes pelletized or sintered, then shipped on bulk carriers and delivered to a blast furnace before any steelmaking even begins. For complex, globally sourced goods, the logistics chain for raw materials can rival or exceed the cost of production itself, though the balance shifts significantly depending on the industry and geography. A car manufacturer building a vehicle in Germany might source steel refined from ore mined in Brazil, shipped to a Dutch port, processed in a Belgian mill, and trucked across 2 borders before it touches the factory floor. That vulnerability is not a bug in the system. It is the unavoidable reality of making complex goods at planetary scale. Manufacturers manage it through supplier diversity and strategic stockpiling, buffer inventory held precisely because the world is not reliable. But there is a cost to carrying inventory, which means the system is always running a calculated gamble. Hold too much stock and you tie up capital. Hold too little and your line stops. The raw material problem never fully goes away. It just gets managed. Once a raw material arrives at the facility, the first thing that happens is not production, it is testing. And this is where most people's mental model of manufacturing falls apart, because they imagine factories as places where things are made. The reality is that a serious factory is also a laboratory. Incoming materials are quarantined and sampled before a single kilogram goes anywhere near the production floor. In pharmaceutical manufacturing, this is a legal requirement. In steel, aluminum, and chemical manufacturing, the logic is identical even when it is not legally mandated. You cannot build a consistent product from inconsistent inputs. The material transformation itself is staggering in its physical intensity. Iron ore becomes steel through a process that involves temperatures above 1500 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt the silica, sulfur, and phosphorus impurities out of the iron melt. Limestone is added to the furnace to pull those impurities into a liquid layer called slag, which floats on top and is poured off. What remains is molten iron, which is then converted into steel by blowing pure oxygen through it at supersonic speeds, burning off excess carbon in minutes. The resulting liquid steel is cast into slabs or billets, cooled, and rolled into the sheet, coil, or beam shapes that manufacturers actually order. That entire sequence, from ore to finished steel coil ready for a stamping press, can happen inside 48 hours on an efficient integrated plant. The precision required to hit a target carbon content of 0.05% in a furnace holding hundreds of tons of liquid metal is more demanding than most people realize. When the material arrives at the production factory, whether that is a car plant, an electronics manufacturer, or a consumer goods facility, the orchestration begins. In 2024, factories around the world installed 542,000 industrial robots in a single year. The total number of robots running on factory floors globally has now crossed 4.5 million units. 4.5 million robotic arms, welding rigs, pick-and-place systems, and autonomous vehicles, all moving at the same time, all day, all night, around the world. The image of a factory as rows of humans on an assembly line is decades out of date. In modern high-volume production, the human role has shifted from doing repetitive physical tasks to supervising, programming, maintaining, and making the judgment calls machines still cannot. A robotic welding cell in an automotive plant can place a weld to within fractions of a millimeter, repeat it thousands of times a day without fatigue, and log every single cycle to a central database. But if the jig holding the part is slightly misaligned, the robot will faithfully weld in exactly the wrong place, thousands of times, until a human catches it. That is the tension at the heart of modern manufacturing. Automation makes the good things faster and the mistakes more expensive. The smart factories leading the industry are not the ones with the most robots. They are the ones where the robots and the humans are checking each other. For most of the 20th century, factories ran on a model called mass inventory. Keep huge stockpiles of every component on hand so the line never stops. Then Toyota introduced a different idea, and it changed everything. The Toyota production system operates on two core principles. The first is just-in-time. Materials and components arrive close to when they are needed, in roughly the quantities needed, minimizing idle inventory rather than eliminating it entirely. The logic is that excess stock hides problems. A buffer of parts masks a bad supplier, a slow machine, a misaligned process. Shrink the buffer and every flaw becomes visible immediately. The second principle is called Jidoka, automation with a human touch. Any machine, any process, any worker on the line has the authority and the obligation to stop production the moment an abnormality is detected, not to flag it for review. Stop. Immediately. Catching a defect at the point it occurs is exponentially cheaper than discovering it 3 steps later or in the hands of a customer. Those two ideas together created the most efficient high-volume manufacturing system the world had seen. And they also exposed the system to a new kind of risk. JIT works brilliantly when the supply chain is calm. When it is not, when a semiconductor plant in Taiwan has a fire, when a shipping route is blocked, when a single Tier 2 supplier fails, the cost of a minimized buffer becomes terrifyingly clear. A factory capable of producing thousands of vehicles a day can be brought to a halt by the absence of a small, inexpensive chip. That is what a lean system looks like when the world stops cooperating. There is a layer of the factory that most people never see and rarely think about: quality control. A product that fails is not just a commercial problem. It is a safety risk, a legal liability, and a reputational collapse that can take years to recover from. The international standard that governs how factories build quality into their processes is ISO 9001. ISO 9001 certification does not mean your product is good. It means you have a documented, audited system for controlling how your product is made, and that if something goes wrong, you can trace exactly what happened and why. In practice, quality control operates at 3 levels. Incoming inspection catches bad material before it enters the process. In-process inspection catches defects as they form, so a bad batch is stopped before it becomes 1,000 bad products. Final inspection verifies the finished product against specification before it leaves the building. In food and pharmaceutical manufacturing, there is a 4th layer: batch records. Every ingredient, every process step, every time and temperature, every operator who touched the product is logged. If a product is recalled, regulators can pull up a map of every affected lot: which supplier, which shift, which machine settings, which warehouses it reached. That traceability is not bureaucratic theater. It is what turns a potential disaster into a contained, traceable event. And increasingly, The same philosophy is moving into electronics, automotive, and aerospace, because the cost of a recall at scale has made the cost of rigorous documentation look cheap by comparison. Assembly is the stage where the factory becomes legible to the outside world. It is also the stage where complexity reaches its peak. A modern automobile has somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 individual parts. Consider just one of them, a car door. It starts as a flat steel blank, stamped into shape under thousands of tons of press force. It moves to a body shop where robots weld the inner and outer panels together. It goes through a paint shop cleaned, phosphated, primed, base-coated, clear-coated before it ever sees the final assembly line. Then it arrives at a specific station in sequence, where workers mount the window regulator, the wiring harness, the door trim, the latch, the speaker, and the glass. Every fastener torqued to spec, every clip seated, every electrical connection tested. And that is one door. Multiply that across the entire vehicle, at a pace of roughly one car every 60 to 90 seconds in a high-volume plant. Electronics assembly operates at an even more intense level of precision. Surface mount technology places components as small as a fraction of a millimeter onto circuit boards, using machines that can accurately position tens of thousands of parts per hour. Solder paste is applied through a stencil, components are placed by machine, and the whole assembly passes through a reflow oven that melts and then solidifies the solder in a precise temperature profile. The whole process, from bare board to populated PCB, can happen in minutes. The density of engineering packed into that sequence is almost surreal. Before any product leaves a factory, it has to pass through a final gate. In some industries, that gate is a functional test. Every smartphone that comes off a production line is individually powered on, every screen checked, every sensor exercised, every connection tested before it goes into a box. In automotive manufacturing, vehicles are driven through test tracks built into or adjacent to the plant, checking brakes, steering, noise, wind leaks, and water ingress on every single unit. This is not a sample check. It is 100% inspection, because the cost of a warranty claim or a recall vastly exceeds the cost of a few minutes of testing. Packaging is not an afterthought. For consumer goods, packaging is part of the product. It has to protect the item through potentially thousands of miles of logistics, communicate the brand on a shelf, and meet environmental regulations that are growing stricter every year in major markets. Filling machines for liquid products can handle thousands of containers per hour. Labeling machines apply adhesive labels with sub-millimeter precision at line speed. Palletizing robots stack finished cartons in precisely optimized patterns that maximize the use of a shipping container. From the moment a finished product is sealed to the moment it leaves the dock door, an automated system has logged its batch number, its weight, its destination, and its carrier. A barcode scan creating a chain of custody that makes a recall manageable rather than catastrophic. A factory is not a closed system. It is a node in a network that spans continents, and understanding mass production means understanding that network. Think of it concretely. For a mid-range smartphone, the supply chain may include lithium from mines in Chile or Australia, cobalt from Central Africa, rare earth elements in the magnets and sensors from China's mineral provinces, display glass manufactured in South Korea, and a chip designed in California and fabricated on wafers in Taiwan. All of it converges on an assembly facility where those components are soldered, screwed, and tested into a device that ships to a warehouse in Germany, a distribution center in Texas, a store in Brazil. The exact routing varies by brand and year, but the complexity is consistent. Dozens of countries, hundreds of suppliers, thousands of decisions. The coordination required to keep that system running consumes vast quantities of computational power. Logistics software is routing trucks, calculating reorder points, flagging supplier lead time changes, and predicting demand by geography and season. When that forecast is wrong, when demand spikes unexpectedly or collapses, The ripple effects travel in both directions through the chain, amplified at each step. Economists call it the bullwhip effect. A small fluctuation at retail becomes a larger swing at the wholesaler, a larger one still at the manufacturer, and a brutal correction at the raw material supplier. Disruption does not stay where it starts, it travels and it grows. Mass production is not static. Three forces are reshaping the factory faster than at any point in the past 30 years. The first is smarter robotics. Collaborative robots, cobots, designed to work safely alongside humans without safety caging, are moving into mid-size and small factories that could never have afforded automation before. Vision systems that inspect surfaces for defects at a resolution the human eye cannot match are becoming standard equipment. The second force is predictive maintenance. Artificial intelligence analyzes the vibration signature and thermal profile of a machine to predict a bearing failure days before it happens. So maintenance is scheduled rather than emergency responded to. A machine that never fails unexpectedly is a machine that never stops a line. The third force is geographic. Supply chain disruptions over the past several years have pushed governments and corporations to rethink the logic of concentrating production in a small number of low-cost countries. Factory location, pins on a global map, are moving closer to the consumer. A trend visible in semiconductor fabs being built in the United States and Europe, pharmaceutical production being moved back onshore, and automotive assembly expanding in Mexico and Eastern Europe. Some of this is driven by security concerns about critical goods, some by the rising cost of long-distance logistics, and some by a simple arithmetic. As robots reduce the labor cost advantage of low-wage regions, the cost gap between manufacturing in Asia and manufacturing closer to the end market narrows. The factory is coming home. But it is arriving automated. And what that means for employment, for communities, and for the economics of production is a question the world has not finished answering. Every product you own is the result of a system operating at a scale that is genuinely hard to comprehend. Billions of tons of raw material extracted, transformed, tested, assembled, inspected, and routed across a global network of extraordinary precision. The individual factory, with its robots and quality systems and timed assembly stations, is impressive. But it is one node in a chain that reaches from a mine in the southern hemisphere to a shelf near you, coordinated in real time, held together by engineering, logistics, and the constant management of fragility. Mass production is civilization's most powerful and most vulnerable infrastructure, and it never stops moving. Next episode, we follow a single object from the mine where its raw material is dug out of the ground to the doorstep where it arrives. Every kilometer, every transformation, every hand it passes through. If that kind of depth is what you come here for, subscribe now so you do not miss it.